So I see we have 12 viewers. My name's Keegan Kuhn. I'm the co-director of Cowspiracy, What the Health, and the director of a new film called Running for Good, which is a feature-length documentary about four-time world record vegan runner Fiona Oakes called Running for Good, which is now streaming on runningforgoodfilm.com. Excited to be doing this Q&A. Definitely leave your questions for me. If you want to talk about Cowspiracy or What the Health or the new film, Running for Good, definitely want to hear your questions. Hey, Marcus, did you have any questions? So I see lots of highs, which is cool. For those who haven't seen Running for Good yet, you can see it on runningforgoodfilm.com. You can also set up screenings. There are screenings happening all around the world right now through our theatrical partner, Tug. And again, all that information is at runningforgoodfilm.com. And for those who haven't seen Cowspiracy, you can see that on Netflix globally. You can also see it on cowspiracy.com. And for What the Health, also streaming on Netflix globally, but it's also available on Amazon and iTunes and Google, and as well as whatthehealthfilm.com. So what's my biggest passions besides being a director from Tom? To be honest, one of my biggest passions is paleontology. That's since I was a little kid, loved dinosaurs, and that's still true today. But the natural world, really, I mean, that's what gets me excited, and that's really what I'm working for, is the fact that we have a very fragile planet that we need to be supporting instead of destroying. And right now we have a very destructive relationship for it. So working on behalf of the planet, I feel like, is one of my biggest passions. Hiking, I hike every day. Thankfully, I live in a really beautiful place, Sedona, Arizona, where there's 100 trailheads within the city limits. It's really a town, 9,000 people, and getting out as much as possible. That's really probably my biggest passion. So will your next film be on Netflix too? I would love for Running for Good to be on Netflix. We will see what happens. It's interesting. Cowspiracy was out for a year before it went on Netflix. We were very fortunate to have Leonardo DiCaprio take Cowspiracy to Netflix for us and say, "Hey, I'm going to be executive producer on this film. Love you guys to take it on." So I realize there's having a feedback issue. I don't have a speaker on. Let's see, is this any better for audio? So we'll see. We'll see what happens when Running for Good, if it ends up on Netflix. Sorry, everybody, still dealing with an echo. Let me see if there's something else I can do. All right. Hello, Keegan. How does it feel to see your movies on big cinema screen? To see my films up in big theaters is pretty amazing. It's, definitely, as a filmmaker, you dream about having your film shown in cinemas, and then to have the film shown around the world via streaming platforms like Netflix is really the next level. That's really what I think most filmmakers strive for, because only so many people are going to be able to see your film in cinemas, but to see it again around the world. Cowspiracy has been translated into over 20 languages. What the Hell? It's been translated in over 20 languages. So it's amazing to have the film being so widely accessible to so many people around the world. Running for Good, the new film, has been translated into 4 languages right now. Cantonese, Japanese, German, and English, actually. So 5, and Croatian. So it's exciting. So since when have I been vegan? I have been vegan since I was 12 years old. So I was very fortunate to be raised vegetarian. My mom had 2 rules in our house, basically, which were don't hurt anybody, which meant don't hurt your brother's body or your sister's body or a cow's body or a chicken's body. Don't hurt anybody, and always question authority. And when you're raised with those sort of ethics, it's very quickly to go into the place of feeling like, hey, being vegetarian isn't enough because the dairy industry causes tremendous harm to cows, and it causes a tremendous amount of harm to egg-laying hens. And so at age 12, I became vegan, thanks in part to that, but also to the hardcore punk band Earth Crisis. They talked about veganism and animal liberation and made a very strong argument for a teen kid to hear and say, right on, this is what I need to be doing. So, sorry, Marcus, working on, hopefully the audio is better now. Just give me a second to read these questions. So from Stefan, Keegan, thank you for your important work. How do you get your energy for your work? Because I think you see a lot of difficult things while you were making such movies. It is difficult to make these films because you're uncovering a lot of really disturbing information. It's both visually that you're seeing in front of you, but also during the research. With Cowspiracy, we did about 2 years worth of research before I really started making that film with my co-director Kip Anderson. And the amount of really dire studies that I had to read and review was really hard. And where I get my energy and my motivation is really from the feeling that we might not be able to save the world. We might not be able to save all the animals. We might not be able to achieve our goals, but we can make a difference. And that we can make a difference today, that you can minimize the suffering of so many people, animals, and the planet simply by adopting a plant-based vegan lifestyle. It's the most dramatic thing you can do of any lifestyle choice, and simply just stop supporting animal agriculture or any animal exploitation industry. So that's where I keep kind of going back to is we might not be able to win this battle, but we can definitely make a difference today. We got Sweet Pea, my partner's cat, wants to be part of the live Q&A. What was the most difficult moment you experienced during the production of your movies? The hardest part for sure of making Cowspiracy was filming the duck slaughter. In Cowspiracy, we explore all the impacts of animal agriculture. And at one point we go to a backyard farm, somebody who's locally raising ducks in his backyard for slaughter, because people always talk about that as being the most sustainable. Oh, well, if it's local, therefore it's okay, it's good. And we watched as he killed these 2 ducks to eat. And that was really difficult. I never thought that I'd be able to stand by and watch somebody kill an animal, let alone multiple animals, and not do something. But you definitely separate yourself through the lens, and you figure what's the bigger impact I can have here? I can stop this guy right now from killing these animals, or I can hopefully these animals' lives and deaths will inspire people to no longer kill. That was really hard. And then the other really hard part about making What the Health was we were in North Carolina in the southeast United States, where there's a tremendous amount of pig farms, and the pig farms allow the waste from the farms just to flow right into the streams and rivers, and the amount of pollution that causes is absolutely astronomical. And one morning we woke up and there was a massive fish kill, which there was so much pollution in the river, excuse me, that it caused these algae blooms. The algae deprives the water of all oxygen, so all the fish start to suffocate in the water. So they float up to the surface and they're gasping, trying to breathe. And to see, tens of thousands of animals dying in front of you because of this violent industry, the hog industry, was really difficult. And then to see and interview the people directly impacted by these farms as well, who live next to these, environmental disasters, was really, really difficult. For making Running for Good, Running for Good follows Fiona Oakes as she runs across the Sahara Desert. That was definitely a challenge to keep up with Fiona with camera gear. Thankfully, I had a vehicle with me, but about half of the course that she was running wasn't accessible by vehicle, so it was me running along with her. So 12 years old is very young. I wish I did the same. How old are you now? I am almost 34. So I've been vegan more than half my life. Do you consider your documentaries to be a form of activism? Do you also take your activism to the streets, joining demonstrations from Tom? Yeah, so I started as a street activist, going to a lot of protests. I used to do leafleting 3 or 4 times a week with vegan outreach and vegan advocacy. And I used to have my own organization called Rescued, which was a farm animal advocacy organization. So we printed our own literature and produced our own films. And I think street activism is still important. It's still something that I engage in occasionally. I live in a small town now, so there's not a lot of going on. But if a circus comes through a neighboring city, we go out to it. I used to live in the Bay Area of San Francisco, California, and we were involved a lot in animals use and entertainment. I think all forms of activism are necessary. I think really it's important for people to just focus on, though, what really feeds them and what feels best. For some people, they're really uncomfortable at street protests, and it's just not their nature. And they might be a lot better with government campaigns. They might be better with fundraising to support organizations. They might be better with using their art or their skill, or maybe they're a filmmaker, maybe they're a musician. I think it really is important that we don't need to just have one solution. We need all of the solutions. So I encourage people to do every type of activism that really works for them. So from Samuel, what are your most favorite bands today? Still to this day, I listen to a lot of punk and hardcore. Earth Crisis still is one of my favorite bands. There's an amazing hardcore, really dark core band from Czech Republic called Gattaca. Amazing political vegan band. And then a lot of older bands as well. One King Down, Run with the Hunted. These are all pretty obscure hardcore and punk bands, but they're really good if you like political music and you like aggressive music. One of my favorite non-aggressive bands is Calexico, which is like Southwest inspired Western music. Which was the best advice you have gotten in from who? From Allegra. So what's the best advice I've ever gotten and who was it from? Gosh, that's a good question. I think some of the best advice I've ever gotten is from my mom. My mom teaches women empowerment workshops surrounding health and birth. And she had somebody who came to one of her workshops and said, "What would I do if I wasn't afraid?" And I kind of used that as her model for how to make decisions. And so my mom taught me that as a kid to ask myself, if you're trying to make a hard decision, well, what would I do if I wasn't afraid? And to never make decisions out of fear. And that's probably the best advice I've ever gotten. And I've really tried to live my life by that fear is a really great, important thing because it gives us perspective and it makes us pause for a moment, but to never be controlled by fear, and that fear will stop us from doing things. Sometimes for the better, but most of the times it stops us from doing things because it's the what if. And I think that we shouldn't be controlled by fear. So that's probably the best advice I've ever gotten. From Franca Keegan, amazing work. How do you feel at the beginning of your career, and how do you feel now? I feel still excited about the potential and the impact of documentary films. I think they're a unique medium for reaching lots of people and getting people interested and excited about new ideas or re-inspired about old ideas. Um, I feel like we are kind of in this new age. A tipping point is really happening where people are waking up and people are really hungry for information. I think people are aware that they've been lied to or misled by a lot of mainstream outlets, and they're looking for more information. And thanks to the internet and thanks to platforms like Netflix that make films like Cowspiracy and What the Health accessible around the world, I think that we're really starting to go into a new place. So I'm excited for what's to come. So, Keegan, my question is, are you a team player or a lonely wolf? I'm probably more in the lonely wolf category. With Cowspiracy and What the Health, I co-directed with my friend Kip Anderson, who's the star of those films. And that was the first time I'd ever worked with anyone else. I'd always done my own projects by myself, shoot, edit, write, score, animations, everything, one person. And if you see the credits for Cowspiracy and What the Health, they are also basically just Kip and I. There's not working with a lot of people. And Running for Good is the same. I directed that one solo, and there was only about 6 people who worked on the entire film. So I tend to do things by myself. And a big part of that comes from the punk scene. The punk community, which kind of raised me, was very much about the do-it-yourself ethic. Always figure out a way that you can do it yourself versus hiring it out or going to a company. And so it's taught me and encouraged me to do things on my own versus trying to find others. I think working together is awesome. I think you get amazing results when you work collaboratively. It's just kind of how I have come up. So, next question. Some scenes in Cowspiracy are very disturbing. How did you obtain the footage? Um, some of the more disturbing footage in Cowspiracy for me was the fish slaughter. There was a bluefin tuna slaughter footage that was in the film. And we got that footage courtesy of Animal Equality, an amazing Spanish organization who now actually works all throughout the world doing really incredible investigations and campaigns on behalf of animals, particularly farmed animals. Their bluefin tuna campaign and investigation that took place in the Mediterranean was phenomenal. Some of the most incredible footage I've ever seen of sea life slaughter in large mass scale. And then the other footage of destruction was stuff that we shot ourselves. We were very fortunate to work with a great French filmmaker who had done a documentary all about the impacts of cattle on the Amazon, who allowed us to license footage from his film. But most of that film we shot ourselves. So, next question. What are the biggest achievements from your own perspective in your career? The biggest achievements for me would be getting our films on Netflix. That's a huge achievement. Netflix is a global platform and has this incredible reach, so that feels pretty massive. But last year, one of the biggest honor I've ever gotten is that What the Health was nominated for an Outstanding Image Award, Outstanding Documentary for Image Awards, which is the NAACP's Media Awards, which is a civil rights organization started back in the 60s fighting for the rights of African Americans and people of color in general. And the fact that they nominated our film, What the Health, for an Outstanding Documentary Award was really phenomenal and quite an honor. We went to the awards. We didn't win, which is by all means fine. It was just an honor just to get nominated in the first place and to be invited to the ceremony. From Ulrich, what is the most bizarre thing you've witnessed during your filmmaking career? Some of the most bizarre things that I've seen have been the interviews that we've gotten with people. You would expect when you interview somebody who's the head of a rainforest organization, who knows that animal agriculture is the leading cause of rainforest destruction, to say, raising animals, livestock, and feed crops are the leading cause of rainforest destruction. And to watch them walk around and skirt the question and try and avoid the answer at all costs, that's probably one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen. Or the shocking answers we've gotten from people where they have straight up said what we were expecting or thought. And we in Cowspiracy, we interviewed a organic dairy farmer, and he said straight on camera, because, well, dairy is not sustainable. It's not for the world's population the way we're consuming it and the way we're producing it. There's no way it's going to be sustainable. Those are pretty bizarre, but again, makes great for film. So from Tom, are you still active in your band True Nature? Love your music, by the way. Well, thanks, Tom. True Nature is kind of in hibernation. I tried to start, True Nature was my band that I toured with for about 6 years, almost 7 years. Thankfully got to play throughout German-speaking world. And it was a lot of fun. It was, again, a platform to use to try and reach people, to talk about animal liberation, human liberation, and earth liberation issues. Touring's hard. I was touring about 6 months out of the year, and it kind of got to a point where I was ready to do something else. And I also felt like the impact was only so far. I could only reach so many people with music, and that's why I shifted gears into doing films, because I felt like I could reach more people. There is a True Nature record in the works, and maybe we'll have that out in the next year, but we'll see. It's been a long time coming, but thanks, Tom, for the support. See this next one from Timobrew. Do I have to feel bad as a meat eater? No, I think if you feel bad eating meat, well, that says something, right? Like, if we feel bad about something, it's either because of programming or because of something internally. And I think a lot of times people do feel bad about eating meat because on some level they feel it's wrong. If you wouldn't be able to Tim, if you wouldn't be able to kill an animal yourself, then why is it okay to pay someone else to kill those animals? And I think that's a question for yourself. Moving towards a plant-based diet is the most sustainable thing you can do. It's one of the most ethical things you can do that benefits the planet and clearly the animals that would have been killed. But it's also one of the best things you can do for your heart, for preventing diabetes and many types of cancer. Next question from Barbara. What do you wish to achieve with your documentaries? I want to inspire critical thought. That's the motivation for all of these films, is really never to tell anybody what to do. It's just to present information, allow people to make up their own minds. And like the last question, should meat eaters feel bad? Well, no, it's ask yourself, what do you feel? And really to examine the whole issue of how we treat each other, other animals, and the planet. So with that, I think we're able to achieve a lot of that. We're getting people to think critically about their relationship to others. Next question from Ulrich. What was your most difficult film ever to shoot? All the films have been different. My first feature film that I did was called Turlock, which was about an egg farm that abandoned 50,000 egg-laying hens in battery cages. Cages so small that the animals couldn't spread their wings, and you would have 7 to 10 birds in one of those cages. And a farmer abandoned those animals for over 2 weeks without any food and left them just to starve to death. And I was one of the first people on the site and was inside the facility. And to see 20,000 animals who had already died and were dead in these cages with living birds was definitely difficult. And that was a hard film to make because it was over the course of an entire year filming the animals that we were able to save. I was actively involved in that rescue, pulling animals and rehabilitating animals at the sanctuary animal place, who took in over 4,000 animals, these hens. That was a definitely difficult film. But then you have a film like What the Health that has over 50 interviews. And so there's this huge amount of information that you have to go through, almost 200 hours of footage that has to be edited down to 90 minutes. That was difficult. And then you have something like Running for Good, my most recent film, where I'm following an ultra runner. And it's like, that's a difficult subject and a difficult film to logistically film. So they've all had their own quirks and the old things that have been difficult, but they're ultimately, I think, really rewarding. So from Sanja, what platforms can you recommend new filmmakers who don't have an audience yet to share and distribute your content? I think one of the best ways to get your films out there is YouTube, a free platform that has incredible reach. You have, phenomenal vloggers who have huge subscriber platforms. I think that's one of the best ways. Vimeo is another good way, but it's a premium service, so it costs you money. But YouTube, I think, is a great way to get films out there. Facebook, I mean, really, we're kind of in this whole new age of getting distribution. It's become a little bit more democratized. As far as selling your films, Vimeo on demand, I think, is a great way. That we've sold Cowspiracy, What the Health, and now Running for Good, my most recent film, on Vimeo on demand, and that's a great platform to do it with because you can stream, you can do rentals, you can do digital downloads. That's a great place. So from Tom again, what's your favorite vegan food? My favorite food is bananas. I used to be 80-20 raw, and I was eating about 40 pounds, like 20 kilos of bananas a week. That's by far my favorite food, and I could eat bananas all day long, and I sometimes do eat bananas all day long. And Samuel, what do you think where humanity be? So where will humanity be in the next 20 years? Well, if you look at the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC's most recent report, they say we have less than 12 years to address climate change before we are going to exceed the 1.5 Celsius degree global temperature increase. To do that, we're going to have to cut emissions by about 70%. And not to be hopeless, but that's a big ask for the world's economies who think that we have to use fossil fuels and we have to use animals. But we've seen, and we look at history, humanity has been pushed to the point of making radical changes. I mean, human slavery existed for pretty much all of humanity's history up until very recent times that we don't see mass enslavement in the way we used to. There's still obviously slavery issues. There's still obviously, forced marriages and, allegories to slavery and how people are treated in developing countries for exploitation. But we don't see the slave trade in existing the way it used to. And that's something that exists throughout all humanity. So I think we could see a massive shift happen in the next 20 years. In the next 20 years, though, we're going to have to see a huge shift towards a plant-based diet. That's the only way we're going to feed the 9 billion people that will be on this planet in 20 years. There's simply no way we're going to feed them any other way. GMOs will never be able to meet the demand. Even if you had incredible super crops, you're not going to be able to do it anything short of a shift towards a plant-based diet because animals eat most of the world's grain. From Barbara, what does success mean for me? Success is about impact. How many people and the ripple effect these films have had, that's success to me. And for anybody, I think it's what kind of positive impact have you had on the world and other people. That's success, because it's definitely not money. Ulrich, what are your thoughts on PETA? Do you think their way of promoting veganism is harming the cause? I think every type of campaign and every type of tactic has its place. I don't agree with everything that PETA does, but I don't agree with everything any organization does. You'll have an organization that focuses on welfare, making bigger cages, and you'll have an organization like the Animal Liberation Front, which is advocating for direct action, and whether legal or not. I think all of the tactics are necessary because it pushes the conversation forward. I feel very confident that we wouldn't be having the conversations around veganism and around animal rights if it wasn't for a mainstream organization like PETA that has used really radical and outlandish tactics to get media attention. Definitely has, there's backlash and people say, oh, all animal rights people are like PETA activists. But I think PETA has done a huge amount for promoting the message of veganism, has gotten animal rights into mainstream culture. So I'm very thankful to PETA. But again, it's whatever tactic really speaks to people. If PETA's tactics doesn't feel right to you, that's fine. Use whatever tactics you think are best for you, and kind of ignore the naysayers, because there's always going to be people who say this is the wrong way to do it and this is the right way to do it. And I have my feelings about what's wrong and right of how to advocate for veganism, but I think they all have a place. So another question from Samuel: will the world be meat free ever? I think that there is probably never going to be a time where the entire population doesn't eat animals. I think if you look at indigenous cultures who still live a traditional way of life, whether that's hunting or gathering or nomadic herders, I think those people will continue to kill and use animals. But for developed societies, or not, that's maybe not the right term, but for economically developed countries, I think we are going to see a shift towards more of a plant-based diet, because people are realizing that is what is absolutely necessary. But then you can also look at, there are entire states in India that don't allow slaughter of cows. You have entire vegetarian cities in India that don't allow the slaughter of any animal within the city limits. So I think that there is a possibility that we will see regions of the world that would no longer kill animals, or at very least will cut the slaughter by 80, 90%. I think it's the only way we're going to sustainably survive as a species. Another question from Tom: do you have any animal companions living with you? I live with a cat who's my partner's cat. When I got together with my amazing partner, Shani, she had 3 cats, so it was a package deal. I'm not really into companion animals. I understand people find a lot of joy and love from having, other animals that they share their homes with, and people who adopt animals. I think that's great. I'd love to see a world where there are no more companion animals, because these are artificial species. These are species who have been created by humanity for our purpose, and I would like to see all domesticated species be able to be wild, or let those species go extinct, because they've been artificially bred, they've been selectively bred, and they've been forced into our human world. And I would like to see all animals being free. We love Sweet Pea, who's the cat who lives with us, but I would love her to be able to have complete freedom. And sadly, in the world that we live in, with cars and with violence and with all the dangers that modern world brings with it, she doesn't have the freedoms that I think she deserves. So the next question from Marcus: have you ever been to Switzerland? I have been to Switzerland. I've been to Switzerland a number of times. I really like Switzerland. One of my good friends is from Switzerland. I have actually a handful of friends from Switzerland. It is a beautiful country. I, on tour with my band True Nature, got to play in Switzerland probably close to 10 times, and the shows were always great. So love to come back to Switzerland. So thank you for sharing all your experience. It's very interesting. I'd like to know how you deal with being in the spotlight. I am not in the spotlight very much. My co-director, Kip Anderson, who's the star of Cowspiracy and What the Hell, he's definitely in the spotlight a lot more. I mean, for example, we were out to dinner. Granted, it was at a vegan restaurant, but we were interrupted 5 times by people who wanted to get their pictures taken with him. And even though I'm the co-director of these films, people have no interest in having their picture taken with me. Perhaps that's how I look. But so I get to stay out of the spotlight a lot. I'm behind the scenes for the most part, and that's comfortable with me. Having been the singer of a band, I got to be in the spotlight in a small aspect like that, and got my fix for it. So it's relatively easy for myself. From Marcus: what's on your cap? What's on my cap is Food Not Bombs, which is an international organization that provides free vegan meals, vegetarian meals definitely, but most of the time they're vegan, to people all around the world. And it's from the idea that started in the United States and started in San Francisco, California, that the US military spends more money on ammunition, on munitions, weapons of all kinds, than we would to feed the entire US population for a year. So more money is spent on killing people just in one day than it would take to feed the entire US population for a year. And so Food Not Bombs is a great organization. They are anarchist based in the sense that they're autonomous. Anybody can start a Food Not Bombs chapter anywhere in the world. They just follow some basic principles, which is provide free vegetarian, vegan food to people in need, and to not exploit anybody, and in a message of promoting compassion. So we actually, when we launched What the Health, for the first 4 days, 50% of all proceeds from the film's launch went to Food Not Bombs. So we were able to make a really nice contribution to Food Not Bombs, which again went out into all of their chapters. So I think I would not be surprised if there is a Food Not Bombs chapter in Switzerland, probably in the more bigger cities like Zurich. So I'm only going to do a few more questions. How was it to work with Fiona Oakes? Fiona Oakes, who's the star of my most recent film, Running for Good, is amazing. She is one of the most humble people you could ever meet. She is vegan since she was 6 years old. She's 51 now, 4-time world record marathon runners, run pretty much every extreme race in the world, and so humble and just such a positive, beautiful heart. She cares for over 250 animals every single day on her sanctuary in the UK, Tower Hill Stables. Definitely check her out. Watch the film Running for Good. You can see it at runningforgoodfilm.com, and look at her website as well, which is towerhillstables.org. She's phenomenal. All right, so let's finish up a few more. What's come next after Running for Good? I have a new film that I'm working on with my friend John Lewis, who's the Badass Vegan Online, and it's a food justice documentary through the lens of hip hop. And so we're looking at the role that food access has on people's health, but also the role that institutional racism has, pharmaceutical government corruption, so much historical colonialism on food systems. But it's doing through the lens of hip hop, because what hip hop artists wear, say, drive, drink, eat, talk about influences the purchasing power of millions of people. So we're interviewing phenomenal hip hop artists from around the United States and world who are advocating for a plant-based diet. So it's really cool. All right, so do one more question, but then just wanted to mention that Winity is doing a screening of Running for Good, and I'm super excited about that. It'll be the Swiss premiere of Running for Good, my new film. Definitely check them out on Facebook. That's the best way to keep up to date with when they're going to be doing the screening. Again, Winity is hosting the premiere of Running for Good, so stay tuned to all of their social media platforms, because I'm sure they'll be posting about it when it's actually going to happen. So before I answer this last question, thank you all so much for tuning into this live Q&A. It's the first time Winity has done a live Q&A. I feel really honored to be invited to be part of this. I'm thankful for the platform, thankful for all of you for tuning in. Please, share this information, share anything and everything that you're excited about, that gets people excited about, sustainability, compassionate living, and conscious living in general. So last question from Razak. How do you deal with annoying non-vegan relatives during holiday family meetings? So I am in an incredible situation that my entire family is vegan at this point, and I feel very, very fortunate for that. It was a long time coming. I was the first one in my family to go vegan, but everyone has gone vegan. And so family get-togethers and celebrations are really easy because we're all vegan. When people deal with, if you're dealing with non-vegan relatives, I think the best thing to do is always come from a place of compassion, that for most of us, we weren't born vegan. Somebody took the time to educate us, and they probably took the time in a very compassionate way. So to when someone gives you a hard time or is making fun of you or whatever it is, just to be as kind and as sweet and as compassionate as possible and as patient as possible, because I think that's really what gets things across. But if you use anger, hey, sometimes that works as well. So again, thank you all so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Thanks again, Weenie Bee, for inviting me to be part of this. It's an honor, and I'm thankful for all the work that you are doing. So thanks again.